We are on. We're great. So I'm going to do something actually a little bit different in my talk. I'm going to start off by talking to you about stars. There is a link, and it's not just because I'm from Gift Universe. There is actually a little bit more relevance to it, I promise. Specifically, I want to talk to you about the very catchily named SN 2014J, which sounds hideous. What this is really something that was discovered by chance at the University of London Observatory in 2014. They were running a training session, and it was one professor and 4 undergraduates, and they'd hoped to see all sorts of other things, but being London, the cloud cover was absolutely hideous. So they pointed their telescope up at the only bit of sky that wasn't covered by cloud and happened to see a star that they weren't expecting there. So in those 2 images you can see it wasn't there before at the very start of January, and they discovered it actually on the 14th of January and went, gosh, that looks a bit different. Checked it with a different telescope to make sure that it wasn't just a byproduct of an artifact created by that particular telescope they were using. And it wasn't, it was something completely legit. And what it is a supernova, and that's when there's a star that grows to a particular size where it no longer becomes stable and it explodes, creating something that is much more visible for us to see. Now, the media went absolutely bonkers over this because shortly after it was discovered, they did a little bit more observation, and they found that actually it'd be another 14 days before it reached its peak light, before it fully exploded and really took off. So they all went mad and reported it everywhere. And in the academic side, there was also a huge amount of coverage. There were over 200 papers published about it. So it was a really, really big deal. And the really interesting thing is you go back and you read these papers and you read the media coverage, and they all talk about it exploding on that date, which isn't right at all. They talk about it exploding 14 days after it was first discovered. This is 11.5 million light years away. So really, it exploded 11.5 billion and 14 days years ago. So it's really not something that's current, but we report it as though it is. And the way this links into retail is, I'm sure it hasn't passed anyone by that there've been a lot of people, a lot of industry, a lot of retailers who've suddenly taken a tumble. Big, immovable retailers who we thought would be as certain as stars to stick around for ages, aren't there anymore. And the media is going mad for it. They're reporting it as though it's absolutely current, when really it's not. For a lot of these retailers, their demise was so inevitable, you could almost say, glibly, it was written in the stars. Sorry. But they are all starting to fall. And lots of different people, lots of different journalists, lots of different researchers have come up with all sorts of different ideas as to why these people might be falling, just as they've come up with lots of different ideas as to why those stars might be exploding in that way. And you'll hear these quoted all the time. It's people saying they didn't adapt fast enough, they didn't pick up their digital strategy well enough. Amazon was a huge threat to them. The in-store experience was crap. They talk about Toys R Us having a terrible in-store experience. Their footprint was too large, there were too many stores. All these different reasons that they say are the certain reasons as to why these different retailers collapsed. But with each of them, there's always a retailer that's actually collapsing for a completely different reason. So people saying that the prices were too high and they didn't compete on that. Well, Pound World, it is Pound World, not Poundland. Yep, Pound World is really struggling. That's not a price issue. It's saying that stores can't compete with Amazon when we can see that a lot of pure play retailers like Amazon, like other pure play, are now investing in stores. Everything that's there, whether it's a digital presence, we've seen Tesco Direct struggle, we've seen BHS had an online presence, which actually you would think should be able to make work, and they couldn't make it work. There are all these different reasons and all these different counters as to why that's not the thing that's doing it. It was a little bit scary for us seeing all these different things, we kind of took a step back. To talk to you about Gift Universe, we are known on the high street as Menkind or Red 5. At this time of year, we have between 60 and 70 stores, specialising in men's gifts and gadgets and generally cool stuff. But that's quite a large store footprint. It increases around Christmas time to 80 to 90 stores. We're really terrible online, really terrible online. Less than 5% of our business currently goes through our website. Quite a lot more of our business goes through Amazon. And we don't really have a lot of product exclusivity. Anything that we do have that's an exclusive product that we've brought in, we actually also run a wholesale business through Gift Universe. So we go and sell to our competitors, often at a price that allows them to undercut us on our own product and just break the whole system. So we're doing a really, really crap job. So we took a step back and we went, okay, maybe we need to solve some things. Now, I am also very aware that for the majority of people here, it's a Magento conference. You're not necessarily going to be all about stores. You're going to be about online. And actually, this is still really, really relevant, because if we look at the patterns that are there, the rate at which internet retail is growing is actually in steady decline. It's reaching its peak. You know, it's still going to be an enormous part of retail as a whole, but it's not going to keep on growing at the same pace it has. So if we've just been acquiring customers because there are behavioural changes where people are now starting to shop online who didn't before, we can only live off that for so long. There's also, if we look at retail growth as a whole, it's actually quite well aligned, give or take, with the retail price index. So yes, retail is making more and more every year, but we're putting our prices up every year in line with inflation. So actually, are we growing at that much, or is it actually quite steady? So it then becomes a question not necessarily about what are we doing, how do we get more people, how do we improve the experience. It's about running away from bears, and I'm sorry I've put in a terrible, terrible reference. That's Ursa Major, also known as the Big Bear. And it's not about those bears either, but I really like that, so I put that in. It's more about a fairly well-known joke that I'm sure a lot of people have heard, where two hikers are going for a walk, Matt and Simon, and they come across a bear. And Simon starts running for it, turns around and sees Matt is slowly taking off his walking boots and putting on his running shoes. And Simon yells back, "Matt, you dick, you can't outrun a bear." And Matt says, "I don't have to outrun a bear, I just have to outrun you." And that's really what retail starts to be about. If it's not growing, which it isn't really, it starts to be about staying ahead of the competition. It's about, if you want to grow, you have to steal that growth off someone else. And a lot of people talk about innovation in that space. You know, we hear about Uber, we hear about Airbnb, how they are stealing more of the market share through innovation and coming up with these wonderful new ideas. But for most of us, innovation is terrifying. We don't have the big budgets that Amazon does. We can't do drone delivery. We can't change the world in that way. So I've been running through this over and over, and actually, you can tell I definitely did this well in advance. That Google Doodle is from yesterday. Innovation isn't necessarily always about coming up with this great big new idea. Sometimes it's just about an idea that's new to the environment you're in. So in retail, it can be about, actually, what should we be doing that we're not already doing that's not necessarily going to change the world, but just rectify those awful things that are there, and everyone has them. Everyone has legacy problems of some sort, or problems that they know exist and need to be solved in a way that is much better than the way they're being solved at the moment. So when we look back at Gift Universe and all of these different things, that was our target list, really. We went, those are the things we have to change. If we want to succeed and we want to survive, we have to turn around an 80 million turnover company, completely about shift, and change the way we sell to people and change the way we think about who we are. So we looked at a few different key areas. One of the really, really big ones is price. We had a really terrible pricing strategy because we sold through all sorts of different channels. We had one price if you were buying from us in our store, a different price if you bought from us online. Because we sold through Amazon as well, we actually had a different price there so we could compete. We had obviously a different price that was going through to our wholesale customers, who then drove a different price in the market for different products. It was quite all over the place. Other retailers could undercut us quite easily. We thought we were doing quite well because we did check out the competition. It was one competitor that for some reason, I think CEOs always end up with their pet competition hates. For us in particular, it was Hawkins Bazaar. So he would check the prices of Hawkins and go, well, we're cheaper than them, we must be doing all right, which is just dire. And there wasn't really any appreciation of how quickly the market moves on pricing. And we see this ourselves as shoppers. I will never go and buy something from the first website. I'll go and do my research, look on Google Shopping, trawl through 3 pages of organic results. I won't ever buy it at the most expensive price. I will normally buy it from the cheapest. I might consider some other things, but price is still a really, really key part of it. So we had to change that. So we took a little bit more of a digital approach. We started looking at one company who could give us a big overview of all the prices of all of our products listed through Google Shopping. We already had information about all of the prices of our products on Amazon. And we're now doing a weekly change. Now, we won't necessarily be the absolute cheapest on everything because sometimes it doesn't make sense to be. If we've got a product that's selling faster than we can bring it in, we might want to actually keep the stock level and make more money from it. But we will definitely be very aware of it. It also plays into our strategy, which we'll bring into stores later on this year, where to date, they used to do really terrible ticketing, literally write it on a little ticket and stick it on every single product in our stores. That doesn't work when you're changing your prices at least once a week, potentially twice a week. So we're bringing in a whole new ticketing system to reflect that new need to change our prices based on what the market is doing. We're also looking at how we sell to different people, particularly Amazon-only sellers. We were supplying a lot of businesses who existed entirely on Amazon. We can still do that. We have to obviously be a little bit more sensible about what prices we offer to them in the first place so that we can continue to exist ourselves. And that also means that actually we have a stronger argument to be able to go to other retailers who have stores or who are online but aren't necessarily interested in a race to the bottom, and say, this is the bottom price that we allow people to sell it at. So you can try and do innovation on other things. You don't have to worry about price being one of them. And this was a really scary thing for us, talking about changing prices, some of them significantly. We have a brilliant Stormtrooper decanter, if anyone's still looking for Father's Day gifts. It's literally the face of a Stormtrooper which holds whiskey, and I love it. We dropped the prices at from $22.99 to $14.99. That's enormous for one of our best-selling lines. But actually, when we ran the analysis, we found that changing all of those prices would only have a 1 to 2% impact on our margin before we had any uplift from actually being one of the most competitively priced retailers out there. So it's about taking a step back and us going, what more can we do that's beyond what we ever thought possible to drive something and to change the business before we find there is no business to change? Similarly, on digital, we were really, really bad. I joined in July last year. I'm probably the most technically capable person at the company, which tells you how scary it was. We used to focus on, we got great sales through Amazon, and we're really strong online. But actually, when you account for all of Amazon's fees, we weren't doing a sensible job of it. We were going for the vanity of the top line revenue and not caring about any of the profit at the bottom. Click and collect was just horrid. It was just a really poor experience, and we didn't leverage any of the really sensible things that we could be doing and that we should be doing, and that we didn't even need to invest a lot of money in to make happen. So we also, when I first joined, they told me that for any of our PPC campaigns, they expected an ROI of 10. And I went, sorry, what? And they based that entirely on the fact that, according to them, their kind of gut feel, well, we only see customers once a year. They only come and shop with us at Christmas. Occasionally we get a few shopping for birthdays or Father's Day. So why would we invest the money if we're never going to see them come back and have a repeat purchase? And it's only by starting to leverage the online information that we can go, hey, actually, our customer base is pretty loyal. Turns out people who like cool stuff continue buying cool stuff quite frequently. It's not just gifting, people are also buying for themselves. And that immediately presents a picture of knowing your lifetime value and knowing your customer, and knowing therefore how much they're worth, and therefore how much you can spend on acquiring them in the first place. We're changing the way we're starting to think about Amazon. So rather than it being this big necessary evil where we go, yeah, we took in millions of pounds, there's that £5,000 we'll contribute, we can actually look at it to understand what we can do in a better way. So we use the same team to run Amazon as we do to run our PPC campaigns. The reason being that normally if there is a novelty gift that perhaps Philip Schofield mentions, or a few years ago we had a product shown for all of about 4 seconds on Gogglebox that went absolutely insane, really, really mad. There's the chance for that person to see those immediate sales coming through on Amazon, which is most people's first port of call, to then push that back into our PPC shopping campaigns and improve the visibility of any of those products that were performing really well. It means we can start to think about acquiring those customers in a different way and knowing more about what it is they want. So delivering a much better all-round experience for them. I'll take you back first and I'll show you that. We've also started working closer with our stores, enabling them from a digital perspective. So stores, you talk about silos. Stores were pretty much silos all on their own. It wasn't even that they were particularly communicative with other stores, never mind online or anything else. And what we started to do was to bring all of that data together. So we brought in a new back-end ERP system. So little basic things like, I bought this online, can I return it in store? Yes, you now can. You couldn't a few weeks ago. I bought this from one store, can I return it to another? Yeah, you can. As well as that piece about customers and knowing about their orders, we also tried to enable stores to look after their own digital presence a little bit more. And what we found from that is that it's enormously benefited us as a company. So we've allowed all of our different stores to own their own Instagram accounts, and a lot of them hated doing it. And then we found there were some absolute gems in the mix. So this is a tiny short video, there's no sound, created by our Meadowhall store. And they do loads of these. They're just little stop motion videos where they're just basically playing and having fun. And they end up with thousands and thousands of followers. Now that's far more than we could ever manage in head office. Yeah, we've got creativity, but the person who's looking after Instagram for us is also looking after 16 other things. We don't really have the capacity for that. But suddenly we found within the entire company, there was a lot more resource to do really cool stuff. A lot of the people who come to work at Gift Universe and Menkind or Red 5 are generally a little bit geeky, generally quite quirky, a little bit cool. They would love any of the space references. And it means that they're actually the epitome of our typical customer. We've hired an entire army of people who can tell us exactly what our customers want, because they are effectively our customers. On product exclusivity, this is a really tough one. Because we work in the novelty gifting industry, novelty is all about new, obviously. It's about having that next coolest thing that has no purpose in your life, like a giant dinosaur sprinkler. Very little purpose in life, but it's just something that you want when you see it. We do a lot of our own product development. If we just sold those products through our website alone, we wouldn't make as much as if we sold them through wholesale channels as well. And there are other benefits to us selling them through wholesale channels. Other people do great PR for them. We get to benefit from that. It's not a bad thing. So whilst we would try and push product exclusivity, we would also know that it's not something you can control forever. There's a bit of a story behind why there's a hideous picture of me doing DIY. We bought a house in December, and I eat my avocados in it, and I'm a millennial, thank you very much. It's an awful, hideous 70s wreck. So we're doing it up. And much to my husband's dismay, it turns out, accidentally, I have some weird, quirky, sometimes expensive tastes. And I decided the one thing I needed in our house, absolutely needed, which again slightly ties into the star theme, was this, I think, quite cool lamp, which at the time when I first found it, you could only get from John Lewis for £120, which in my husband's view was about £100 too much for a light, possibly £110 too much for a light. John Lewis was the only exclusive seller of this. I thought I was going to have to just stump it up and hide it in the bank account somewhere. But it turns out there are some great people on eBay, on Amazon, on all sorts of different places who make products like this as soon as they see them and see that they're starting to do cool things. So I actually, in the end, ended up buying it from B&Q. Now, had that option not been available, I would have gone to John Lewis quite happily. As soon as the option was available to buy it from someone else, price then became the most important thing again. So you have to balance it out, and that's what we're having to do. We try and bring in exclusive products to sell them at the most we can whilst they're still exclusive. And after that, we have to be really sensible and agile enough to move across and actually take into account the fact that shoppers will want it, but they'll also want it from whoever's going to sell it to them. It also means you can sit on the other side of it. So for us, last year, you might have joined in the fidget spinner craze. This is obviously not our own product. And arguably, it was a really easy, cheap product to create. For us last year, we went, should we get in on this craze or should we pass it by? It doesn't play into any of the things we really care about. That fidget spinner, not that one in particular, but fidget spinners accounted for 20 to 30% of our revenue in Q1 last year, which for a little thing which costs between £5 and £10 is a pretty significant thing for something which we didn't have exclusive rights over. We were just really well placed with the price of it. And then finally, we're starting to bring in all sorts of different new concept ideas to our stores. A little bit of it is the Instagram. We're also trying to make sure that the lines of communication between everyone within our entire business are open so that we can take this innovative approach of, well, actually, I think you should be giving away a free gift or having checkout offers, tiny things like that, that they'll mention in store that we can actually also try and recreate online. We see very different sales patterns between in-store and online, and we can actually use both to inform what the strategy is on each to the greater benefit of the company. So it's been a really interesting time, a really interesting period of change, and at no point have we had to go and find anything completely new. We've never had to go and create something, bring in something terrifying, bring in a whole new way of processing data because there's so much there. It's actually just been fundamentally me and a very small team and a few spreadsheets, and then going, actually, this is an idea that we think could work. So it is about change and it is about transformation, and we're very fortunate that the CEO cares about digital transformation. But that's because he has seen that if not, he's very likely to end up like one of those different supernova. To bring it back in, really what we're trying to do is be like the, again, incredibly named Etta Carine A specifically. This they believed was a supernova. It's the brightest star you can see in that picture, just slightly hiding behind the text. They believed it was a supernova. It was 80 times the size of our own sun. They were expecting a mammoth explosion. And actually, what it did was kind of started to explode, got really, really bright, and then went through a period of just simmering down again and being fine. And they were all a bit confused. They'd never seen anything like it. And there are around 20 objects that they've ever discovered in our universe, which they call supernova imposters, which go a lot of the way towards exploding and then go, nah, I'm all right. And if I could do one thing for our business, that's really what I want us to do. I want us to keep on growing at such a rate that it looks like it's not sustainable, and then go, okay, we're here. Now let's take a moment and take stock and stabilize, and then we can look at doing it all over again. So yeah, if you can take away anything from it, just don't necessarily focus on trying to be the absolute best and bring in these great new strategies. Really, it should just be about looking after the absolute basics, which I think a number of people have already said today as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Suzannah. That was awesome. Thank you. Has anybody got any questions? Ooh, coming to you. And back up again. I've lost you. There you are.
Hi, thanks for that. The question I have is for those of us who have bricks and mortar as well as online and perhaps Amazon and eBay. Practically, how did you manage to sync your pricing, or what did you do with your pricing between those 3 or 4 channels?
So we use one ERP, which we can control our prices from at head office. We used a tool called Scoodle to do the price checking across the entire internet. And we used our Amazon tool to let us know the prices there. We then stuck them all into a spreadsheet, crunched them together, and kicked out a number at the end based on some fairly simple maths, but which also took into account standard deviation and fun things like that, so that we weren't just going to a single eBay seller. We were looking at really actual competitors. And then any digital prices are just synced through that back-end ERP. Allowing, on Amazon, we do allow an up to 5% variance because that buy box is important, but it's more about tweaking the other prices to meet Amazon, because if Amazon can sell it including all of their fees, we should be able to make it work in stores and on our website. And then later on this year, as I say, we'll have a new ticketing system, which means that pretty much at the touch of a button, we can print out new shelf strip tickets that make life a lot easier and mean that we're not making stores relabel everything. Practically, that's how it was.
Perfect. So, any other questions? No? Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Suzannah. That talk was really, really great. Please give her a big round of applause.